Well, Shannon, if you're a Toronto sports fan, pretty good day yesterday, all in all. The Raptors get a miracle shot at the buzzer to win. Maple Leafs sweep their little 2-game series with Calgary, which maybe you and I and 4 friends could have done.
Come on now. That's a little harsh. It's a little harsh.
But it's real. It's they are not playing well.
They're working hard in the offensive zone, and they're making too many mistakes in the defensive zone. The Flames are. That's
analyze your ass off. The truth of the matter is they can't beat anybody. So that's the reality. And
hold on. Anybody? The Toronto might be one of the top 3 teams in the league. Toronto's a little more than just anybody.
Well, I grant
that's the impressive part.
They're failing in their effort to make a move to improve their position in the standings in anticipation of a potential playoff berth, which seems like a complete and total pipe dream. That having been said, so what's the other? The Blue Jays won comfortably yesterday,
6-2 yesterday. How about all those people at the stadium in Texas? Oh my goodness!
Not surprising. I mean, there's nothing stupider than people in Texas. But and a significant number of them with no masks on as well.
Wow. And
I guess if you're going to sit beside somebody, if you have a mask on or don't have a mask on, maybe it doesn't mean a damn thing. I don't know. I mean, who has the answer?
Well, no, you do know. You do know. If you wear a mask, you cut down the chances. It's not 100%, but you cut down the chances.
Well, says some guy who has been wrong about just about everything else.
No, wears a mask a lot. No.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wear my mask too, but I do it because they tell me to, not because I know it makes any difference.
So in any event, you guys, you big guys in the big smoke. Toronto wins 3 times yesterday, so life is good.
Well, that was sort of my point, but you keep taking me off on a tangent. And
you're never off on a tangent, are you, Bob? Your whole life is a tangent.
Yeah, well, get used to it. I'll tell you, the Blue Jays offense has not been overwhelming by any stretch of the imagination, but the pitching has been superb. The big, question mark for this franchise was pitching, and it has been impeccable through the first 4 games.
So if the Jays were 1-3, we would say it's early. So they're 3-1. It's still early.
When you got 162 to play and you're through 4, it's early. Whether you're 3-1, 1-3, 0-4, 4-0, 2-2, whatever you are.
Exactly.
I think I covered all the possibilities. The greatest waste of time in all of sport arrives soon. The trade deadline in the National Hockey League, where 2 major sports networks will devote hundreds of thousands of dollars, all kinds of resources, dozens and dozens of people to analyze nothing.
I tell you what, Bob, then you know what? We should waste some time doing it too.
Well, you have booked that very process for us today. So, fortuitously,
let's waste some more time.
Fortuitously, it is with a couple of good guys and pals of ours, and we'll see what they have to say about the upcoming scenario. Eric Duhatschek, Scott Burnside will join us momentarily when we continue after this. McCowan, Shannon on the program for today, and with us, a couple of hockey pucks. In Calgary, Eric Duhatschek joins us, and in, usually Atlanta, but now, Panama Beach? Is that where you are, Burnside?
Panama City Beach. Just mixing things up here as we head into the trade deadline. So, it's the same thing, right, Bob? You never leave the house. It's just I'm in a different house. So that's all.
Well, you're in one of the hockey meccas of America. I'm quite sure.
Well, not to hijack things right away, but who used to be down here, and I used to be in contact with pretty regularly, is Glenn Metropolitan. He was down here I think he's now in Tampa. He's got, but he was down here in the 30A area of the Panhandle, wow. And so used to trade texts with Glenn Metropolitan every once in a while. But that's the extent of the hockey connection down here. I can say that.
Well, to quote an old friend of ours, good Toronto boy. You know?
Coming up on Monday, the trade deadline, the most colossal waste of time in the entire world. Nothing is, everybody's nodding here, except for Shannon, who of course.
Well, I laugh when you say it's a waste of time, and then you're going to spend 50 minutes talking about it. You know.
Well, because you booked this program is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for your amusement.
Well,
certainly not mine. Much as I love to talk to these two characters, on any other topic, I'd be much more interested. In fact, I'd be much more interested if it wasn't even hockey we'd be talking about. But nonetheless, let us go through this complete and utter waste of time.
Tell the listeners not to listen.
Don't listen to this. Shut it off right away. You'll learn nothing. Nothing of consequence will come of this conversation. Now, did you two guys? Duhatschek, you did stuff for the Idiot Trade Deadline Day on one of the two networks, or perhaps even both of them at one point. Did you not?
Absolutely, yes. There was a period of time when I was part of that TSN crowd, and I use the term, figuratively as well as literally, where they had like 16 different sets, and I was part of the writers, insight into whatever. And so they would only ever go to us when nothing was happening, which was always like the first 3 hours of programming. So like when they were trying to fill, they would go to me and Farber and that lot. And then all of a sudden, all of those major, fifth round draft choices for guys you never heard of trades started happening. And then they go to the quote, the real insider. So yes, I have done that. And you're right. They always seem to spend 2 weeks leading into that programming, apologizing for the poor hosts like Duthie who are going to have to fill 8 hours. And then momentum picks up as it approaches the deadline, and there are transactions, whether you call them blockbuster trades or not is another matter. And then at the end of the day, the ratings are so great that the next year they add 2 other hours and they start at 6 in the morning. So I'm kind of with you on this. I'm kind of with you on this.
Scotty, did you do, I don't recall, did you do any of these TSN or Sportsnet epics?
No, I never got invited to the big stage, although during my tenure at ESPN, the trade deadline was a big deal, relatively speaking, as it related to hockey. And for many years, Pierre Lebrun and I would trundle down to Bristol, Connecticut, along with whoever else made up the hockey group at that time, Katie Strang and Joey McDonald, and at various times. But I think once I ended up on the real desk with Linda Cohn during trade deadline, and we always taped a show that went right to the site. But John Buchagras was the host, or maybe Steve Levy may have hosted it. But no, even for ESPN, and I don't mean to sort of kick at the NHL's new partner, but relatively speaking, it was a big deal. The trade deadline was a big deal for the hockey group at ESPN, because it is what it is. Eric's point is an excellent one, right? I mean, even if the trade, I'm not as cynical about it, because I think it's a great time, and the timing is interesting. Pierre Lebrun and I just literally finished taping our own podcast segment with Jim Rutherford, and this is his first trade deadline since 1994, when he took on the job in Hartford, that he's not going to be in the midst of it. And yeah, some stuff never happens, but you know what? There's always something that happens, either good or bad. A team, craters by making a horrific deal and spending too much on a player, maybe like Taylor Hall. But there are also deals every year where at the end of it, you're like, oh, you know what? Like how important were the Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow to the Tampa Bay Lightning and winning a Stanley Cup? These things happen. So yeah, maybe I just don't think I'm not as cynical about it. I'm excited, even though Monday looms as maybe a potential sort of non-event because of the flat cap and COVID and the quarantine and the expansion draft. I'm still pumped for it. So there you go.
So the other aspect of that, Scott, is that it could become a dud because the delineation between buyers and sellers. And if you're a team that's a buyer, or you already think you're in the playoffs, this is not the year to be spending a lot to give up, to get something, because it's such a strange year. And you look at the Central Division, and that's the division, folks, where Tampa and Florida and Carolina are light years ahead of everyone else. They don't have to do anything. They've got a good solid core, and they're set. And you don't want to put yourself of mortgaging the future at all in a year like this, do you?
No, absolutely not. And that's, I guess my point is going to be that I can only imagine tweaks happening. So I think the two best teams in the National Hockey League right now are Tampa and Colorado. And what do they have in common? They have excellent goaltending, guys who are in the Vezina Trophy conversation. And you have no issues as long as you're convinced that Philip Grubauer and Andrei Vasilevsky are going to be healthy from here to the end. But if you get past those two guys, and if you have an injury, they don't have anyone, I don't think, that can come in and win games for them. So I think their seasons could completely disappear, go right up in smoke if they had an injury to a goaltender. So is it not important for those teams to get someone in there that can reliably win games for you on the off chance that your starters get hurt? So that, to me, and then you look at the salary cap and you realize, well, they can't bring anybody in because they don't have any money to spend. And it becomes this puzzle. It becomes way more complicated than it has to be, because they have to shoehorn, let's say, Jonathan Bernier's contract in by moving something. But yeah, and I guess this is when I go into old guy mode, because it used to be, John, as you know, way simpler, where if Kenny Holland wanted to go and add a piece, he would just go to, knock on Mike Ilitch's door, and Mr. Ilitch, we need, Luke Robitaille, or we need Brett Hull. And it was like, yeah, go ahead. And you do it, and away it goes. Now you practically have to be an accountant. You have to be a lawyer. You have to have all of these skill sets that are not normally associated with what we do, to try and figure out how to add a backup goaltender. That's the part that drives me crazy. It's unnecessarily complicated for something that should be a fairly simple transaction.
Actually, we had Richard Petty on yesterday, and he said, well, Pat Quinn, he had a budget and exceeded it every time. I remember one trade deadline before the cap was put in place, Pat just went out and, whether it was Brian Leach, Phil Housley, Ron Francis, I mean, just go get them, because we got a chance to win, and why not? And they didn't win.
That's my point. Why not? But you can't do that anymore. So we dissect in this, tiny minutia names that the average hockey fan, they don't even know who these people are. So, but John, I thought you raised another really interesting point, because one of the things that Scotty and I work at The Athletic, and on March the 1st, we, like everybody else, created our big trade board. Right, our big trade board. Here are the 25 to 30 names of people you should be watching and monitoring. And if you go back and look at the big trade board on March the 1st, it is populated by Nashville Predators and Arizona Coyotes. Why? Well, those teams were not going to make the playoffs on March the 1st, and they were having disappointing seasons. And one team had all these defensemen on expiring contracts who would be great rentals, and the other team, Nashville, is like, oh, what's happening there? And then, you fast forward 5 weeks, and both teams are in the playoffs. So now what do? We're going back and redoing the big trade board because something completely unexpected happened. Two teams that looked like they were completely out of it by the nature of this divisional play, where you can gobble up ground quickly because you're just playing divisional opponents. It's completely shifted. And I think you alluded to this, John, that so many teams are waiting until the 11th hour and the 59th minute to say, buy, sell, stay put. I mean, they don't know. It's that to me is the other layer that has affected this season. That the gap between the haves and the have-nots, the buyers and the sellers, isn't as great as it usually is, and everyone is deluding themselves that, hey, we still got a chance. So does that create gridlock or a flurry of activity at the end? And I hope it's a flurry of activity at the end, but I suspect it might just be gridlock.
Well, see, but here, my take on this would be that at some point, though, there are teams that will be in this because they have to be, or they can be, or they are in a position. Like Kyle Dubas has been unequivocal, right? The Leafs are going to add, right? They're going to add a top 9 forward, maybe a top 6, somebody who can play on the wing in the top 2 lines. We know that Lou Lamoriello with the Islanders, because of Anders Lee's season-ending knee injury, that he's got cap space to spend, and he's got a team that that could come out of the East. So he's going to, just as he did last year with picking up Pajot from Ottawa and Andy Green from New Jersey, Lou Lamoriello is going to be a player. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, that's a really good Winnipeg team. Now, maybe, so Matthias Ekholm maybe not be in the mix anymore in Nashville, because now the Predators, maybe they go on a run. Maybe they're suddenly buyers, to Eric's point. But Winnipeg has a shot, I think, as good a shot as anyone to come out of that North Division. And why not make that ad? If it's David Savard from Columbus or whoever it is, you're still going to have 5 or 6 teams that need to make a move of varying significance. Colorado cannot go through the trade deadline without adding a bona fide NHL goaltender. That would be madness. And so I'd still hold out hope for. What are you going to do with, like, Taylor Hall has to go somewhere, right? I mean, he's just going to play out the string in Buffalo, try and pad his 2-goal total? I mean, come on. So at some point, and we've already seen, like, to me, this is where it gets interesting, is that you see that Mark Bergevin goes out early to beat the quarantine. He gets Eric Stahl. He quarantines for 7 days, comes in, scores the overtime winner against Edmonton. Okay, there you go. It works, right? I mean, sign me up. Make a trade.
But Burnside, you're making a case for all kinds of stiffs and irrelevant deals that you think are really significant. Colorado has to get a backup goaltender. Honest to God, walk down the street, you can find a backup goaltender. Taylor Hall, we're going to talk about Taylor Hall as a significant addition to anybody.
I don't know.
He's a guy nobody wants. Somebody will take for nothing. And Buffalo will be happy to just get rid of him because he's a stiff.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree that the varnish is off the Taylor Hall.
You think?
Bauble, but the guy still won a Hart Trophy, and this is, like, again, I'm not overstating it. If I'm a GM, I want very little part of Taylor Hall unless it's a 4th round pick. But again, this is the part that I think will be intriguing as you approach 3 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Which GM, and whether it's Kyle Dubas, whether it's Lou Lamoriello, at some point someone's going to say, you know what, I think I can rehabilitate Taylor Hall, right? I mean, because there is that's the great arrogance of all the NHL GMs.
Wow.
And sometimes it works, right? I mean, and I'll just go back. Jim Rutherford, we talked a bit, was at the trade deadline in 2016, I believe. He picked up Justin Schultz from Edmonton. Right. And they could not wait to get rid of him. Hated Justin Schultz in Edmonton. And he was a critical part of 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh. And he may be part of a Stanley Cup in Washington this year. But again, and to your point, Bob, it was a nothing deal. And people are like, really? We want Justin Schultz? Those are the kinds of deals that at the end of the day, and maybe somebody, resurrects Taylor Hall. I don't know. I wouldn't want him for anything more than the 4th round pick, but maybe someone will.
Burnside, here's the point. If Taylor Hall gets traded on Monday, give me a call and wake me up, all right? Because that's what it's going to take for me to be I'm not even going to be the least bit interested when I wake up. But it's a bunch of stiffs moving for other stiffs. It's junk for junk. That's what happens here. Cite the most significant deal made on trade deadline in your recollection.
Well, I mean, it's the fabled Butch Goring trade. That's what it is. But that was before trade deadline was really trade deadline.
Well, it wasn't even trade deadline. You're right. And it was 50 years ago.
The interesting thing that both Scott and Eric talked about, and Eric, you'd get a kick out of this, is you talk about when the clock ticks towards 3 Eastern. I swear there are 4 or 5 managers, if they haven't got anything done, they break out in hives. That's a good point. They feel they need to do something. And the guy at the top of the list, and he's a friend of mine, and we laugh about it every year, is David Poile. David Poile needs to be part of trade deadline. He's pacing in his office at 2:53 saying, I've got to do something. There's got to be something be done. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say if at 2:53, if Taylor Hall hasn't moved, I'm predicting Taylor Hall goes to the Nashville Predators. because well, in many ways, yes, Bob, just because. But at the same time, if you put two and two together and you say, hey, Nashville's playing well, you know, they need, if Taylor Hall can turn it around, he can score some goals. You always can use a good top six forward if that's what Taylor Hall is anymore. That makes some sense.
Is he?
Taylor Hall to Nashville?
Well, let's be honest here. Is he a top six forward?
He
might be a top six forward on an AHL team, but I'm not sure he's a top 12 forward on any NHL team. How many goals has the guy got? Two. He's a goal scorer. He's got 2 goals.
I think the feeling is he, relatively speaking, hasn't played poorly in Buffalo, just doesn't have anything to show for it, which you could say for just about everyone there.
Are you on the payroll, Burnside? Are you working for his agent?
I'm already telling you, I wouldn't give you anything more than the 4th round pick for him, but I think someone will. Here's my prediction. I predict, and it won't be right, and I would denounce it. I bet someone antes at least a 2nd round pick for Taylor Hall. That's my prediction.
Wow.
The fact that we have spent the last 5 minutes talking about the relevance of Taylor Hall indicates exactly what trade deadline is about. It means nothing. It's a bunch of hockey pucks sitting around with nothing better to do than contemplate their navels and a bunch of 4th round picks. That's what this thing is. It's the greatest con in.
Well, it's not a con. It's not a con.
Of course it is. Yes, it is, because the 2 sports networks and the league promote it as this big thing. And it's a big thing about nothing.
It's throwing bird feed on the ground and watching the pigeons come and eat it. That's what it is.
Well, I understand that this is one of the highlights of your day is to go into the backyard and watch the pigeons feed. But the rest of the world has better things to do. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the concept that Toronto Maple Leafs want to get a 2nd-line player, that's very well and good. I don't know how they're going to afford it, first of all. But second of all, who's that guy? Might the Toronto Maple Leafs even be looking at? Who fits that qualification?
If they were looking for a forward reinforcement, a month ago, the expectation was that it would be Michael Granlund of the Nashville Predators, because they were a team that was interested in signing him. He ended up going back to Nashville. A month ago, Nashville didn't look like a playoff team. He's on an expiring contract, which I think is really critical for this year's trade deadline, and he looked like a fit there. So now they're back. Nashville's back in the mix. Now you have to start shopping the lists of the teams that aren't. To me, the New Jersey Devils are of interest because they have a player, Kyle Palmieri, who has scored 30 goals in the National Hockey League on a fairly regular basis, is on an expiring contract, and will move at the trade deadline. And like last year, the Rangers went through this dance with Chris Kreider, and it was, are we trading him? Are we signing him? Are we trading him? Are we signing him? They ended up signing him to an extension. And so he was the guy that was number 1 on everybody's trade boards last year. And then 72 hours before the trade deadline, signs a contract extension and disappears from the trade board, and everybody else moves up a notch. So this year, it's pretty clear that Palmieri is not signing an extension, and that the teams that are interested in looking for a guy that not that long ago scored 30 goals in the National Hockey League are gonna bid for him. And so you look at the Boston Bruins, they're like the Leafs. They've got 5 forwards that they really like, and they haven't got as much out of Jake DeBrusk as they've liked this year. So they would really like one more piece. And so, he's probably one of the quote bigger names that is going to move. But can I just circle back to something that you said earlier, Bob, about the trade deadline? Because what ends up happening is that there's always one transaction mixed in with those 25 or 30, that if you're actually looking at a printed out list of the thing as it's over, you almost skip right by it. And then, when you sort of look through the ashes of what happened, it ends up being significant. And to me, because you asked the question, the most significant one that's happened in the last 10 years is a transaction between Columbus and Los Angeles in 2014, when the Kings were trying to go for a second Stanley Cup, and they picked up Marian Gaborik. And they got him for peanuts. They got him for Matt Fratton and a couple of conditional picks, and they got Columbus to eat salary. You know, it was just the end of the line for Gaborik, and it went right down to the wire. And the manager there at the time, Dean Lombardi, was very clever because there was a whole bunch of guys that were just sort of lingering there, Mike Camilleri. And part of his negotiation was like, I could pick up, I'll take this guy, I'll take that guy. I'm just looking for a piece. And he managed to make a very favorable deal for Marian Gaborik. And at the end of the playoffs, they played 26 games. He scored 14 goals. That was the leading goal scoring total in the playoffs. He made a difference. They probably wouldn't have won without him because that was a team that had to win a lot of low scoring games, relied on Jonathan Quick, relied on Drew Doughty. So that one transaction, which I don't think very many people were focused on in 2014, made a difference. But, you know, we're talking about that one and a handful of others, Jeff Carter, you know, a couple of years before. If you look back at 10 years of transactions, how many made a tangible difference? Not a support piece like a Michael Kempney, those guys always help, but a guy that made a difference. It has happened occasionally, but it very, very rarely happened.
We got to take the break. We'll come back and continue this conversation, perhaps. Trade deadline day approaching. Duhatschek, Burnside with us, back after these messages. Yours truly, Bob McCown, along with John Shannon, Eric Duhatschek, and Scott Burnside, both of The Athletic, are with us from north and south of the 49th. And that is the point, I think, of the next topic of discussion. There has been much debate about the merit, the willingness of teams to trade across the 49th parallel. Particularly Canadian teams acquiring players from the US because of the COVID situation and the fact that you're losing at least 2 weeks. And John and I have talked to a couple general managers who haven't disputed the notion that effectively you're losing close to 3 weeks.
But that's changed now, Bob. We're down to 7 days now. Right?
Okay, granted, but you're at 2 weeks now, probably because the guy's off for a week. It's going to take a while.
We'll see.
We'll
see. Eric Stahl, to Scotty's point earlier, Eric Stahl went exactly 7 days and was in the lineup on day 7 and scored. So 7 days from team to team is a realistic number.
Well, then based on that information, all teams should be making trades regardless of the quality of the players, because anybody can come in and score a goal right away.
I love the way Bob's logic fits in the show all the time. It's fantastic.
Well, somebody's got to have some logic.
Well, I'm not sure it's the host, but yes, go ahead.
So
say that
if you're a Canadian general manager, and I mean, I don't know, Winnipeg is looking to tweak, Toronto's maybe looking to tweak. I don't think Montreal's likely to do anything else. I haven't heard much about Edmonton.
I don't think they can really, Bob.
They're pretty much stuck, aren't they?
They're tight to the cap, and if there's money, if they get something, it's going to be money in, money out. So I'm not sure they have many.
And the other three, I don't know about Ottawa. Ottawa's still young, and maybe they feel pretty good about where they might be going. Calgary, Vancouver are both a mess and probably want to unload some people. Are there going to be plays here?
Well, I mean, part of the issue is you got to figure out what's happening with Vancouver and their horrific COVID situation as we're chatting today. Certainly, I mean, the NHL continues to insist that they believe the Canucks can play a 56-game schedule. I've talked to some people who believe that that's very much in question, but certainly there are players there, a guy like Tanner Pearson, that the Canucks could likely move for a decent return. And Eric can speak better to the Calgary thing, but it's a complete disaster there. And, after, a couple of, brief early shining moments under Daryl Sutter, I mean, that team is completely aimless. And now I think, boy, I just don't know what is ahead for that team organizationally. And at some point they're going to have to take a good hard look about moving on core pieces, but I don't think you can move them at the deadline. Although,
That's
for me, a guy like, a Johnny Gaudreau, whatever you're going to do in Calgary, something has to be done there, but they're pretty much out of it. And to your point on the 7 days, if you're only going to deal, if you're Kyle Dubas and you prefer not to have to wait 7 days at the minimum to get a guy in your lineup, you are pretty limited on what you could expect to yield from the teams that you can deal with in the North Division. So it does, I'm a bit surprised we haven't seen more, sort of movement a la Mark Bergevin picking up Eric Stahl as early as he did. I'm surprised we didn't see more of that, frankly.
Well, and that's a great point, Scotty, because that a month ago I kept hearing that from managers that everyone's going to move early this year. Everyone's going to move early. Well, early has left the building, right? So now we're down to late. And but what has happened is there has been more settling of the standings, and especially in the North. So to your point about Calgary, they were a month ago a team that legitimately thought that with the coaching change they would be able to have a surge and then continue that surge and at least be in the mix along with the 4 teams that are going to make the playoffs, and therefore that would have made them in the market for a rental probably, but nothing more than that. And the script has flipped since then, and now they're going to be a seller for sure. Now, what do they have to sell? It's not very exciting. Probably the most attractive guy on that roster is their backup goaltender, David Rittich, because he's on an expiring contract. He's making $2.75 million, and just because of the way Markstrom has struggled lately, he's gone in and played okay. So if there's a goaltender market at all that revolves around Jonathan Bernier, and you're the team that comes up short, I think David Rittich is someone that teams have to look at. In terms of guys on expiring contracts, it's just a bunch of minimum wage guys. It's, the Josh Levos, the Brett Ritchies, the Nordstroms. Those are guys that are, 5th round picks. Derek Ryan at 3.125 is one of those versatile people that can win some faceoffs, kill some penalties, play wing, play center, good team guy experience. Like to me, he would be a fit in Carolina. Remember how we were all speculating that wouldn't it be nice if Eric Stahl could go back to Carolina and finish his career with the Hurricanes? Well, Derek Ryan started his career in Carolina. They know him there, again, as a depth piece that, doesn't cost you very much, with, Calgary taking salary back. There might be a fit there. But the type of deal that you're talking about, Scotty, where you're looking at a core piece, those are just so hard to do at the deadline. I think they are going to have to really do an examination of the body when all is said and done, and start to make decisions about Johnny Gaudreau, about Sean Monahan, even about Matthew Tkachuk. Tkachuk, I think, is a key piece going forward. But when he signed his bridge contract, the final year of it is worth $9 million. So at some point they're going to have to qualify Matthew Tkachuk at $9 million to keep his rights, and that's going to be an expensive piece going forward. So it's complicated. And, just the way the organization works, and John can speak to this, they don't like to make rash decisions in the Murray Edwards type of a company. So it's hard for me to believe, unless they think they can make a bold hockey deal at the deadline, that these major decisions aren't going to be pushed into the summer.
Well, in fact, Brad was on with us last Friday and told us, I don't do my big deals until the summertime, or as we know, on the draft floor, where he's done most of his big dealing. Scotty, to finish up on Vancouver, and I'm stating the obvious, but I think a lot of people don't realize they will not play another game before the deadline.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
That's the but because the deadline, it's always looming. It's looming. It never happens, and then all of a sudden it's there. And then with what's happened with Vancouver, they probably won't play any game earlier than the 17th of August. I think that's probably the date that league is looking back to getting back and play, but that's not even a guarantee. So from Vancouver's perspective, April 17th. Yeah. So I just don't see Vancouver being able to do anything. And I think it would be difficult to get a guy out of there. Well, I'm not talking financially. I'm talking medically.
If you're an opposing team, would you even contemplate doing a deal for somebody when you don't have a full disclosure of what his health situation is?
Well, the teams do.
The teams do. Yeah. The teams do get full disclosure on, but
All
but
right.
that's the risk of COVID. That's the risk of the variants and the risk of COVID. That's right.
Would you make a deal for a guy who's got COVID right now? I mean, 99% of them are going to be okay in some time, but you don't know what the long-term impact of this is going to be, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I wonder what Ottawa will do, because we all know they're not going to make the playoffs. We all see the core, where the core is, and then you do have a couple of veteran defensemen there, and Pierre Dorion has to sit and ask what the question is are Braden Coburn and Eric Branson, are they valuable members of this team in the future? And I think there are days you say yes, and there are days you say no, and those are two key players that could make a difference for a team.
Yeah. To me, the guy there is Ryan Zingle, and, who once, I think he had 28 goals. I have to look it up, but his best days were as an Ottawa Senator. Didn't work out in Columbus, didn't work out in Carolina. But Bob, to your point, if you're a North Division team and you're looking for somebody who has shown that at some point he's an NHL scorer, that he's a guy on an expiring contract that, if you can find a way to make it work dollar in, dollar out, either in Edmonton or Toronto, maybe that's a fit. Eric, I was curious about Sam Bennett. I know you wrote about him some time ago, a guy a little bit off the radar, and certainly his discussion, he would prefer, I think, to be somewhere else than Calgary. And that came up earlier in the season, and can only imagine that he would relish a chance to play on a playoff team, but he's not believing he's going to be an RFA, if I'm not mistaken, this summer.
And that is the big complication, Scott. You're right. Like if you're a team that is looking for, what we call a playoff style player, so someone who plays with an edge, someone who elevates their game in the playoffs. I mean, the big thing about the National Hockey League has always been the game changes in the playoffs, and some players don't respond to the way the game changes. The calls are not as, the games are not called as tight. So you need to be able to be all in. You need to have a level of energy. And Bennett is that guy. If you compare the way he plays in the playoffs, I mean, he has a nickname in Calgary. There's playoff Sam Bennett and there's regular season Sam Bennett. But playoff Sam Bennett is an intriguing commodity. And so, you've got a guy who's making under $3 million a year, who's signed for this year and next year. And he's a good player. So I think that, for sure, there will be teams lining up asking about him. I know Colorado has expressed an interest. He would be a really good fit on a handful of teams as a third line guy that will score those goals that the Barclay Goodrows and the Blake Colemans have scored in the past. But Bob started this segment with I thought a really good point, which is that you end up having a whole bunch ado about nothing. But what ends up happening is that last GMs will look at, they have this recency bias, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So they look at last year and they say, wow, Tampa went out and got these character guys that can play in the bottom six, and they actually made a difference in transforming a team that was a little bit too light and a little bit too easy to play against, and help them win a championship. So who's that guy this year? Well, it's Sam Bennett. He's exactly like that. And so the price for those two from Tampa last year was a first-round pick. And so if somebody were to pony up a first-round pick for Sam Bennett, who did go fourth overall in 2014, you're right, he would be a guy on the move, and he is a guy that potentially could make a difference.
I'm not on that page with you, Eric. I don't. Sam. If you talk about playoff Sam Bennett, I understand. I think he plays better, but I don't know how far Calgary's ever gone with playoff Sam Bennett. I'm one of those guys that this is still a team sport, and you have to be able to put that cog in the right spot. I do not see Sam Bennett making a difference, period, anywhere. And if Brad Treliving can get a first round pick for Sam Bennett, give him an extension. Yes. If a general manager gives up a first round pick for Sam Bennett, fire him. Because that, to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
Well, here's what I would say. I think there's going to be inquiries for Sam Bennett, and then it's a bidding war, right? So somebody's going to offer a third. They're going to ask for a first. Maybe they settle for a second. I mean, that's how those deals work.
I know, but I don't think I don't think Sam's a difference maker. I'm sorry.
Well, what's intriguing to me is here's two guys that we've talked about, Bennett and Hall, both of whom were first round picks. Both of whom are going to be on the block, we assume, on Monday or before. Do you pay more because they were first round picks? Simply because you still have that image? Well, two guys are nodding and you're shaking your head, Shannon.
No,
it doesn't surprise me.
No, I mean, hey, listen, no, you can't anymore. I mean, the body of work these guys are going to be measured by are what they've done in the National Hockey League, not what they did for for Kingston and Windsor. That's just not the case.
I don't agree. I think hockey people are that way. They're looking for that, that revitalization, that I can fix this guy. The rest of them couldn't, but I'm smarter than the rest of them.
Yeah,
I can fix it. I can turn Taylor Hall from a 2-goal scorer into a 22-goal scorer, just like that. I think it matters. What do you
tell you what? Eric and Scott can jump in, but all I say is I don't mind taking the risk, but I'm not giving away a high draft pick for any of that risk. I'm not giving. That's not what you do, right, Scotty?
Well, yeah, but I agree with that. But you sort of destroy your own argument when you're saying, well, I wouldn't give a first round pick for Sam Bennett, but he was the 4th overall pick. So at some point, someone believed enough in that kid. And to Bob's point, is there still something there that someone else can turning straw into gold? And I think there is. If we're not having this discussion about Sam Bennett, if he's a 5th round pick, or the discussion is, geez, could you get a 4th for him? I don't know. Like what the Flames would give you, they would give him away for anything if he was a 5th round pick. But I think the fact that he is a 4th round pick, and at some point, if they turn around and fourth overall pick. But if they turn around and get a 4th round pick for him, that is a huge failure for that organization. And maybe it's a failure, doesn't matter what happens, because Sam Bennett's never going to be what they thought he was going to be. But I think that colors all of these discussions, even though the play on the ice, which is your point, and I agree that that's what you should be thinking about. How can he play and how does he fit with my team? The fact of where he was drafted will always become part of the narrative when you're talking about these kinds of deals. And that's why Taylor Hall, of course, if you just looked at his numbers, what you wouldn't give to, Bob said it, I wouldn't want him. But this is his 1st overall pick. He's a former Hart Trophy winner. So these things matter, even though it seems it may be counterintuitive given what you see on the ice. And I'm not going to, it feels like we're dragging Taylor Hall around, but he left New Jersey and New Jersey got better and went to Arizona, and Arizona at best plateaued. He went to Buffalo and they're a disgrace. I don't know. There you go. Still the 1st overall pick.
And Scott, as well as I do that everyone wants to place Taylor Hall in New York with Lou Lamoriello because of the presence of Jordan Eberle with the Islanders. And the feeling
you mean with all those playoff games that they played in Edmonton?
Yeah.
What I would tell you is that the feeling is that if the Islanders have the cap space, as you alluded to, John, because of the Anders Lee injury, and as a result of that, they have the space to add a guy that makes that kind of go, even with Buffalo retaining salary. And in that system, with Barry Trotz there, he doesn't have to be anything more than he was. Not this year, but the years before that. I mean, he was a good, solid player. I mean, if you look up Taylor Hall, you were talking about goal scoring, Bob. He never really scored more. Like he was a 20 to 29 goal scorer who in his good years had a lot of points because he was a playmaker. So you could find a home for him on the left side on that team, and you hope, you cross your fingers that because of friendship with Eberle that would make it easier to adjust to that team, playing within a system where, you play 4 lines, 5 on 5, and you just hope that, he can make a play as a guy that's dishing the puck on the power play. So if the price is reasonable, I think he moves there. I think he could be a difference maker there. But in the case of a guy like Sam Bennett, he's not that old. So, all of those managers have their files from 2014, and about a third of the league had him in the top 2. So that's the Ekblad draft. So Ekblad went 1, Sam Reinhart went 2, Leon Draisaitl went 3. And I did a feature on him right after that. And I had player personnel people, scouts telling me, Sam Bennett is the best player in this draft. People who are decision makers in organizations had him rated ahead of Leon Draisaitl. I have it on the record. I can dig it out of my old Globe and Mail file if you want it. And so all of those people are going to be convinced that they saw something that nobody else did. And that's why he is such an interesting reclamation project at this year's draft. I think, put it this way, I know there's been interest in him. The biggest issue is that he's got a year left on his contract. The teams that are interested in him are completely capped out. So you got to try and make the money work. It's complicated. I get that it's complicated, but there's interest, and it's because he's been
Taylor Hall, Sam Bennett, Kyle Palmieri. I'm taking Kyle Palmieri.
Yep,
I'm with you. I like it.
Hard to argue. We got to get out of here. We got time is our enemy. I love
because there was nothing to talk about, right, Bob? There was nothing to talk about.
Well, you're lucky I was here to orchestrate this. and Duhatschek, I understand your love for Taylor Hall and his 2 goals. I hope he gets traded to Calgary. And
it's his hometown. Why not?
Let's see how you feel about that in a couple of weeks. We got to get out of here, boys. Enjoy the few days before the draft and Monday, if that's even possible. We thank you as always for taking time for us. Thanks, guys. See you soon. I hope.
Anytime.
Eric Duhatschek, Scott Burnside. John and I'll be back after these messages.
Oh God.
Bob McCown, John Shannon. We got to get out fast. We couldn't shut up the hockey pucks.
Well, because it's kids in a candy store, Bob. Pigeons with the bird seed. It's and I'll tell you what, in a pandemic year where you don't have near the access to the players and the coaches and the managers, this is almost like some sort of week of redemption. You have to actually go out and talk about it without having to worry about getting on the phone or on a Zoom call, because you don't have near the contact anymore.
We've had all kinds of coaches and general managers on. I can't.
Yes.
I can't. Bob, the rest of the stiffs in the media can't do their jobs. Most of which you tutored.
Well, no, they
ultimately. I blame you.
I'm not taking the blame for everything. Hey, Masters preview tomorrow, Bob.
Yeah, we'll do that. Lego and perhaps others. A look ahead to Augusta 2021. We thank you for watching, listening, or whatever you're doing. For John Shannon, Bob McCown. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.